Real quick, before we dive into today's lesson, paint the picture of what our listeners will understand by the end of today's conversation. What are you going to cover?
So if you're going to train, you have to have a purpose, because you can just teach steps, and it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be followed if there's no why behind them. So what's our dream, vision, mission for our restaurant, and what is our core values? What do those look like? And everything that we train to has to have this guiding light that pushes the employees towards that. Otherwise, we're just telling them to do stuff. And that's not leadership, that's just bossing people around.
This episode made possible by Restaurant Systems Pro. With excitement, allow me to introduce to you today's guest back on the show for the fourth part of our four-part series of must-have profit systems. Fred Langley, my man, I know you know what's coming next, so you just go ahead and answer the question.
I'm feeling unstoppable.
Awesome, man. I'm stoked for today. And I think training, when we think of systems, I think training, I don't know. I feel like it doesn't get enough attention. And when I think of training, I think of marketing. I think if you're spending money on marketing and you're not training the way you should be training, then start there. What are your thoughts on that statement?
Yeah. So what's funny is we actually teach and help people with their marketing. We'll set up all the technology and things as a coaching thing for our clients, but we don't market that at all. And it's for exactly what you say. If a restaurant's not ready to grow their business, we can actually help somebody lose money faster by helping them market their restaurant without getting all the training and systems in place before you get busier and busier. Because we talked about in budgeting, there's all these variable expenses. So if I do more sales, those variable expenses do nothing but grow, and you end up with no money at the end of the month. And I'm sure every restaurateur has felt that, including me, where you grow sales and then you're like, wait a minute, where's all the money?
Yeah. So I can't wait to get into training, but before we do, we got to get that motivational, inspirational ball rolling with a success quote or mantra. What do you got for us today?
Well, I'm using it. This is not ego driven, but it's my own quote today. And it's because we're going to be talking about training, and we're going to talk about like the guiding principles, the guiding light for your company. And so the success quote is the guiding light for Restaurant Systems Pro. And you could ask any of my employees what it is. And it's our mantra is to serve them well.
Yeah.
And them is the restaurant industry. And so that's our success quote today. And we know that if we can just show up to serve our clients well, then everything else will take care of itself. And so that's our guiding principle. And that goes into our training. That goes into that statement is applied to every decision that my employees make. Is our overarching responsibility is to serve them well. And so we're going to do whatever we can in whatever way we can do it to show up and serve them well. And so everybody, we're going to go over how you do it. Every single business needs to have their own mantra that they go after, their core values that they stick to and train to.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of that idea. Like if you help enough other people achieve what they want in life, you can have anything in life. And that's really what we're doing when we serve people as restaurant owners. And I think if you take that mentality of not just serving your guests, but serving your staff and like attracting onto yourself people who want a career in hospitality and to give them their opportunities and to just to be somebody who creates opportunities for others. And it all starts with training. You're like empowering people. Like that's like inspire, empower, transform. Like this is the empowerment part. Like the training doesn't stop at the frontline staff. It goes all the way up to training your partners, your future partners, like how to be business people. So awesome way to get this thing started. And real quick, before we dive into today's lesson, paint the picture of what our listeners will understand by the end of today's conversation. What are you going to cover?
So if you're going to train, you have to have a purpose, because you can just teach steps, and it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be followed if there's no why behind them. So what's our dream, vision, mission for our restaurant, and what is our core values? What do those look like? And everything that we train to has to have this guiding light that pushes the employees towards that. Otherwise, we're just telling them to do stuff, and that's not leadership. That's just bossing people around.
I was going to say real quick, we have somebody joining us today, a community member, and I highly recommended the book Traction to him, EOS. And in EOS, even in that book, they start with this, the VTO, the Vision Traction Organizer. And that whole process is literally just getting clarity on what you said. Like before you can train, you have to know, where are we going? Like what's the vision? What's the destination, our purpose, our values? So it all starts there.
Yeah. And sometimes it's tough to get there. It's like, well, I feel like I know where we're going. I feel, but are we communicating that to our whole team? And so that's going to be foundational to everything we do. And so we're going to establish not only what that looks like, but a framework on how to establish that. And then I'm going to show you all the training materials. So I'm going to give you all the tools. So, for example, I'm giving Eric resources, very valuable resources that we have at Restaurant Systems Pro for his people in the network.
Yeah.
And so those things are training systems for every position that you have, from dishwasher to GM to area manager to chef, everything that that person needs to do. And evaluation templates and quizzing for training and what all that looks like. So we're going to give you the actual framework of the training that we're talking about, um, that Eric's going to provide for his network. And I've sold thousands of dollars, thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of these training systems to restaurants out there. It's a great need. We used to actually sell these actual systems that Eric's going to be giving you for 6,000. I would sell a few of them a year, and they were just for people that were deciding like, hey, I'm not going to be a Restaurant Systems Pro client, but I do need these systems, and so I'm going to buy them separately. And we would sell those for 6 grand. And so those are going to be included as something that I'm giving Eric to give to his
Yeah,
network.
it's tremendous value. If you head over to restaurantunstoppable.com/live, it's a landing page to sign up for Restaurant Unstoppable Network, where you basically can be a part of all these live conversations. And a bonus is that Fred, for those members, is giving us access to all these training materials. And why don't people have asked me, why don't you just build your own materials? Why would I go out and recreate what's already been created? I rather promote the people who are doing it best. And Fred is one of those, he is the best out there. So, and you get the software on top of it. So like, you can't beat that. If you want to, if you choose to graduate to that level, it's there, but you don't need, you can choose to start with the analog, if that will get you going. And then when you're ready, I recommend implementing software as early as
The
possible.
principle is serve them well, not
Yeah,
check
but
and see if they paid you first and then serve them.
yeah, exactly.
Serve
Yeah.
them well,
So
right?
it's tremendous value, and thank you for doing that. So, get into it.
So in the restaurant business, we have to have a clear mission and vision, right? And what happens is when we don't have that clear vision and mission, we tend to play the blame game where people make up their own job, they decide what the way things that should be done are without clear standards and procedures and I guess operating standards, right? And so, there's paths that we can take, and this is what this is supposed to display, is this, that we don't want to have an undecided path. We want to lay out the path for our employees. And what ends up happening is actually we did a study, and we found that the reason that people leave a business more than anything is just lack of communication from management. And what happens is the way that kind of plays out is that people create their own job the way that they think it should be done. And then all of a sudden, when you come in and tell them to do it differently, you're the jerk, right? When if we're all the management's on the same page and Susie manager says, hey, you can use on your cell phone, but just be really discreet about it. But then Joe manager comes in and be like, no cell phones, no cell phones, right? So it's like having like vague policies and vague standards is where employees really get upset, because if there was really just a no cell phone policy and everybody followed it, there's really not much of an issue. But when one person enforces it, another one doesn't, it becomes a problem in your organization, right? And so having those clear policies and standards and then training to them is so important. And when we talk about it, one of the things I'm going to give away, and Eric, remind me about this, is I have a hospitality training that I do, and it's how to teach hospitality to an untrained workforce. And it's like a 4-hour training, right? So obviously we can't go through that training today, but what we do in that training is we start to lay out what it looks like to deliver hospitality and how we make it tangible and trainable to say, let's say it's an 18-year-old kid who's only ever eaten at McDonald's and now he's working in your restaurant. He or she's working in your restaurant as a busser or counter person or whatever the entry level position is for them to come and work in your restaurant. How do we teach them hospitality, right? And so there's this training of here's what you say, here's what you don't say, here's how you do it. But what you have to establish first is one, those core values, guiding principles, the dream, vision, mission, role. What does that look like, right? And so we want to be able to have those guiding principles. We have to be able to know what our purpose is. We have to be able to know what our mission is. All right.
Yeah.
And so as we go through these, um, establishing what these beliefs are is a very important thing to communicate. Now, one thing that I think is true, and I'm going to use my own journey as where we came through this is as I was hiring my staff for my own restaurants, it was this high level mission to provide experiences that created emotional transactions, right? I learned from psychology class in college that memories are created from creating emotion, and memories are tied to emotion. And when you create emotion, there will be a long-term memory that gets attached to those emotions. Without emotion, it's short-term memory and it goes away. And so my thought was is that I was going to create emotion through how good my food is. That I was and I know this is, I want everybody to like stretch their imagination and try to imagine a chef with a big ego. I know it's going to be a stretch for a lot of you, but try to imagine a chef that has a large ego. And that's including me. And so my goal was that I would give people emotional experiences just from the flavor and taste and texture of the food that I created for them. And
Sounds like a
doesn't it sound like chef,
I've
right?
had arguments with people what's more important, like hospitality service or the food. And when
Right.
we had this argument at a chef's collaborative summit, and I'm pretty sure that I did not really get a lot of foothold in that,
Okay.
but I agree with you.
Well, I'm going to speak as a chef, and we're going to try to tie this all together and hopefully provide some clarity on how it all works together. And if I can provide you some clarity, maybe our restaurateurs can provide clarity for their staff. And so as we go through this, we go, okay, here's my big ego saying that I'm going to make food so good it's going to give people emotional experiences just by biting into it. And so here I am, and I was 27 by the time I opened my own first restaurant with, and so and I was very passionate. I had opened my restaurant because I came from a farm to table restaurant that had grown to be so big that the farmers would show up and then Cisco would pull up right behind them. Nothing against Cisco, but when you claim to be a farm to table restaurant and the Cisco truck's pulling in with a bunch of produce, we have a problem with integrity. And so, and it was partly because they grow so big that the small farmers couldn't produce all they needed, right? And so they needed to supplement it with the big box truck that came in. So anyways, I opened my restaurant with going back to those core values, quality ingredients, quality of service, and I found myself in an interview with servers. And one of the questions I had in my interview process it was to draw out how passionate they were. They could match me in their passion for the industry. And that question was, tell me about a food moment in your life that sticks with you, right? And so here I'm trying to look for those memories. And I'm thinking, and I already knew kind of the answers I was going for, and the answers were this chef, this many courses, this venue, these wine pairings, that was the expectation of the answers I was getting, expecting. But when I asked the question, I got different answers than I expected. And those answers were a hot dog at the ballpark with my father, who I missed dearly.
Hmm.
They were grandma's apple pie at Thanksgiving. They were picking blackberries with my cousins in the summertime at my aunt's house, off the vine and eating them. And to my surprise, there wasn't a chef mentioned in any of these core food memories. And so I had to take a step back and look at what's going on here, because nobody answered that, it was the perfect, grass-fed fillet that
Right.
was farm raised on the local farm that created this emotion for me. And so as I took a step back, I realized that our job as restaurateurs are to create a scenario in which emotions have a possibility of being created. Okay. And that's where it goes into tying in the training systems that you impart into your restaurant, that the goal is to keep people connected. Because my wife has way more of a chance of creating emotion in me than no offense, Tommy, but the ramen, right? The noodles, right? Or how well somebody's saying at karaoke or whatever our venues are doing, right? But if we can create our hot food hot, our cold food hot, and execute and make sure that the conversation never stops, then we have a chance of creating emotion. And we've all experienced that, where we go to a restaurant and we've desired nothing. Everything's there. When we have our soup, we look and our soup spoon's there. When we go to cut our steak, the steak knife is there. When we go to drink our iced tea, our cup is full. When we go to drink for our glass of water, it's there. If I need an oyster fork, it's there. If I, when I ordered it medium rare, it came out medium rare, and our conversation maintained. The server didn't interrupt us with auctioning food at the table. They knew position numbers and where to place it. They didn't backhand us and interrupt conversation, invade our personal space. And so what I started to realize is all the things and steps of service, all the stuff, it goes into keeping people connected so that ladies can connect on ladies' night, and grandma and grandpa's 50th wedding anniversary large party. We all stay connected with each other and have a good time. Then the emotional experiences happen. And that's when we go tell our 10 best friends about the great experience we had at the restaurant.
What up, unstoppable restaurant owners and operators? We have to interrupt today's video to let you know that Restaurant Unstoppable and Restaurant Systems Pro, we're taking our relationship to the next level. Beginning in July of 2024, Fred Langley, CEO of Restaurant Systems Pro, is making himself available once a week in Restaurant Unstoppable Network to answer all of your restaurant systems questions, whether it's be profit margins. He will look at your P&L. Bring your P&L. He will take a look at that. He will dissect it. He will help you find your profit, whether that be through budgeting, inventory management, costing recipe cards, labor, checklist, you name it. He is a master of restaurant systems, and he's making himself available to you. Fred Langley and Restaurant Systems Pro started as a consulting firm, and for over 16 years, they've been helping their clients increase their profit by 10% or more. What are you waiting for? Click the link below to join our Facebook group, Restaurant Unstoppable Network.
Yeah, and if I can tap in real quick,
Yeah.
listening to you is just reminding me of, I think at the core of hospitality, it is just seeing people, right? I think Will Guidera recently talked about this. I saw him talking about it. But like, if you look at, and I like to bring Maslow's hierarchy of needs into the conversation, above, just survival and security, the most important thing that we need is to be seen. And when you are seen, what you're talking right now about is like, and I think of like the Japanese idea of of hospitality is anticipating needs. And when you anticipate needs, you're paying attention to somebody. You're seeing them. You're thinking to yourself, what is this person going to need? And you're doing it before they ask for it. And that is being seen, and it's just so powerful. And then, I think, why do people go out? Why do people go to restaurants? So they can see and be seen by their peers and by their friends and family. It's a place to come and just be together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we just talked about labor, Eric. And so exactly what you're saying. Let's say we look at our labor, and I just said, hey, we can teach a host, like, you get 65 host hours for the week, right? So there might be a time where I have my wife on my arm, we walk into a restaurant and the host is seating another table. And because we're cutting host hours and we're working on budget, there's nobody there. So that means the entire staff needs to be trained to say, welcome. Somebody will be with you in just a moment. Because if we walk in and nobody acknowledges us, nobody says anything, we don't know what to do. And so now, instead of being connected with one another, we're like, do we seat ourselves?
Yeah.
Do we go to the bar? Do we just wait here? What do we do? So we leave the moment that we're in with one another to figure out what to do in the restaurant, right? And we're not going to go on. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say you're making me think of Stephanie Robson, who just did a 3-part workshop about the front of house layout, and she talked about how important it is to have lines of sight in your restaurant. We don't think about that in space. No matter where you are in your restaurant, you need to be able to see people. It's so important to have lines of sight.
And I don't want to get into the minutia, but this applies in so many different ways. And this is where you can take an untrained person to know that, hey, these little things like when I go to like I may if I without this training and I go to a young busser and I say the iced tea is empty at table 5, right? And it's like this urgent, like get your ass moving and table 5 needs iced tea without the context of keeping people connected, I'm just an asshole yelling at this kid about iced tea. But if we're on the same page about what an empty glass of iced tea can mean to a customer not being seen, not being connected to the guests they're with, they're like, oh yeah, boss, I'm on it. And we're on the same page and we're going to do it. So instead of being an asshole, we've trained our standard and we know where we're at. And I'm just coaching and training and being, you know, somebody that's keeping the place on task and on our vision, mission, dream for our restaurant, right?
Yeah.
Things like, even if we're on a wait, you're very busy and you're on a wait. And we know that a table of six top came in behind us, but we have a 2 top waiting, right? Well, we have a table that's at 6. We might actually sit the 6 top before the 2 people because we're not going to sit 2 people at a table that holds 6 for this restaurant, right? Well, the customer doesn't know that, the guest doesn't know that. And so the host that goes and communicates it says, I see you, I know you're waiting, I haven't forgotten about you, goes so far when there's a wait list. Instead of just letting them stew because they don't know anything about the restaurant industry, they're like, we were here before them, and why are they getting seated before us? And all,
Right.
all these things. But if you just go out and say, hey, we know you're here. We just have a table of 2 waiting. The other table's finishing up with their check. It just goes so far.
Right.
Yeah.
Tie this back to core values.
Right. Right. So I can't tell somebody what their core values are. We're going to actually go through an exercise with that today
Yeah.
on how to identify what your core values are. I have a bunch of examples up for you from different ones that we've helped written, and then also the way that we go through. So it's almost like my presentation here, but this is the anatomy of your core values, right? They can be a statement, a list of words. They have to be authentic. They have to be something that is real that you can grab onto. They're there whether you have defined them or not. And it's your job to just define them. Your core values are in there. When you open your restaurant and you're doing it, you do have these core values. But if we do not define them and really spell them out, our people do not know what they are. So they come from what you do, not what you say. Your actions are there. And sometimes with the core values, it can come into how I make decisions. And your core values are how your team is going to make decisions independent of you being there. And so when we're teaching that your core values are and your vision is something that your team can use as their guiding light to make decisions. So let's say that we have a party coming in and we're out of steaks, and the chef goes and he's like, we're out of steaks and it's supposed to be these great steaks, and he goes to the store and he buys at double the price to get the steaks that he needs for the thing. Well, he's like, and then you go to him and you go like, well, boss, our core values are quality and we didn't have the steaks that we needed, and so I had to go buy the quality. And it's be like, hey, great, I wouldn't have done that. You followed our core values. So this is what I would have done. I would have called the restaurant down the street and borrowed them from them, and then we'll pay them back and get them on our shipment instead of paying so much at the supermarket for this, thing. So you're able to take the situations and coach your team, but if they're making decisions, you want them to be able to make them based on your core values, right? And they cannot mess up without your core values, but also without a clear vision of your core values, right?
Yeah.
And therefore you mentioned them too. It's not for the customers, it's for your employees to follow, right?
It's for you. I think, at the very core, it's to keep you honest, because you are the leader. You're creating these core values for your standards of operation and excellence. And if you stay true to your core values, people will follow in your footsteps.
Right.
And you also, in that slide that you just went past,
Yeah.
you said they're there whether you define them or not. Your
Right.
values
Yeah.
aren't like you have values right now. They don't have to be written down, but when you write them
Yep.
down, you cement them.
And your actions are going to define those values, like what, whether you think so or not. So
Can
let's
I
see.
can I share my core values real quick, Fred?
Please do, actually. Yeah.
Because I'm proud of my core values. So my mission statement, my purpose is to inspire, empower, and transform the industry. We inspire through the stories, we empower through sharing knowledge. And the transformation for me is like what we're doing right here. It's not enough just to go inspire with the story, but and to gather the knowledge and to share it, but then to help people implement it, to create community around what we're learning, to bring people together. But the core values are we have integrity, we are students, we are educators, we are communicators, we are of course I'm messing up my own I say these all the time. We are communicators, we are collaborators, and we have fun. And in my mind, that is the transformation part. So we show integrity, we show up no matter what. We just keep showing up, we do the work, we have the discipline. We are students, meaning we are constantly learning and growing. We are constantly trying to be a better version of ourselves today than we were yesterday. We are educators. Once we learn, we need to turn around and teach it to others. It's not enough to lift ourselves up. We need to bring others with us. We are communicators. To your point, the number one reason why people leave is because of lack of communication. This is why I push EOS so much, because you need to build systems to move information daily to get to your goal wherever you're going, and having those systems that you have to communicate constantly. And then lastly, we collaborate because you cannot do it alone. So like literally my core values is the step-by-step process to growing and scaling a business in my mind.
Mhm.
So it's like, I think, to be very intentional with your core values to serve your purpose, I think is something, and it took me years to work that out. um what are your thoughts on those core values?
Yeah, it does take years, and it's why, and it's funny because people don't expect this from us, because we're a software company. But one thing that we do is we understand restaurants well. We understand what hospitality and service can look like, and we know that you can't get to a high level of operational excellence without guiding principles. Software is fine; those are steps that you need to take. It's things that you have to do. But what's the motivation behind doing a checklist every single day? That's not fun. It's like an athlete that has to hit the gym and they hate doing. Some athletes love the gym. A lot of athletes hate the gym, but it's a means to an end for success. And if we're going to coach you, we got to coach you on everything. And so we have processes for doing this. I just brought up four ones that I've helped with. And I say I just helped with them because if we look up here, this is one that I help write. Their core values, they have a word attached to them, and then excellence, leadership, and define enthusiasm, consistency, family and friendships, fun, and then a definition of what those mean to them in those words. Right, here's another one where they talk about the founding of the company and where they're at, and so excellence is number one here, but family is number one over here, and loyalty and service and quality and integrity, as opposed to leadership and enthusiasm, consistency, family freshness. Where's Lily's? Here's one for them: honesty, respect, hospitality, fun. What was it? Fun. Humor was one. It's not fun. Humor is a very important part of who they are and what they're doing. Adventure, to be on an adventure together with their team. Here's one: tradition. Quality, tradition. That's that one didn't show up anywhere else in these other ones, but it's important to them. Quality, hospitality. Hospitality shows up a lot here. And so those principles, they're all different, and they all need to get to who you are as a company. Like we said, they're there. We just got to put them on paper and define them for our staff. There, okay.
Yeah.
We do an exercise, and I have an exercise that gets us through this here too. So we're going to get to org charts here in a second. You can see that as a page, a little preview here. But where am I at here? I'm sorry, I got all these things up and ready for
So while you're
you.
pulling that up,
Yeah.
there are so many like online resources today that you can take to get like like self-awareness, personal awareness. There's core value tests out there, there's personality type tests out there. You can do the work, you can do the self-exploratory work to to figure out this stuff. And I think they're great exercises. I wish I knew you were going to be talking about this specifically. I would have tried to hunt down some of
Well,
those.
it's foundational to training, you know. So, and this is the things I can provide to you, but these are workshops we've done. When we look at this here, you know, we have this restaurant accountability and training, and what it does is it helps you navigate family partnerships, relationships, and running a profitable restaurant, right? And so it's so important to what we're doing. And so part of this 90-page, uh, um, workbook that we've created to take you through is a core values vocabulary. And so what happens most of the time is there's family and partnerships that are happening in a restaurant, and core values need to be every one of the leaders. So if it's a husband and wife, it's got to be her core values with the husband's core values. It can't be just his. If it depends on how involved management is, usually management's not part of this. Maybe they have ownership. Maybe they've been with you for 15, 20 years and they need to be part of this. Or maybe it's two partners or whatever it looks like. Like for Ronnie, Tommy, I don't know your situation, but Ronnie, you and your wife this would be an exercise that the both of you go through for your core values. Tommy, whatever your executive team is, you have 7, so I assume you're not doing this all by yourself. But whatever that core leadership team would do this together. That doesn't mean every GM of the store is going to participate in this, but they're going to be learning it. And what you do is you start going through and you just start checking off the words that stand out for you. And so as you're looking at this, alertness, alignment, competence, discretion, discovery, encourage, empathy, enjoyment, we got all these words can stand out to you: hard work, health. And what happens is you fill this out and you start checking. If this word stands out to you, you start checking it off, and then you come together and you start finding all those overlapping words. And those are the things that you're aligned on, and that where you're gonna really lean into and make sure that you're teaching to them and developing them and defining them for your staff. Because these words will be important to you. And so this is a really good exercise in getting you going in the right direction of really defining what those core values are. Because it can be really hard to just sit in front of a blank page and go, what are my core values?
Yeah. Um,
Um,
so where do you sit on the word? Like, is there a maximum amount of core values you should have?
um, I believe so. We have core values and they're 5. The whole serve them well came from me wanting to really hone that down and make it a statement that somebody can learn to. We do have our 5 core values that are the paragraphs attached to them, and we have that. But what I really wanted is in that one term to be able to have that set. In fact, I even have a slide of it here where sometimes less is more when it comes into it. I think it's okay to have a bigger, like I showed you, there's on these other ones that we showed where, this is an employee going to memorize this, but we want them to at least know tradition, quality, hospitality, and
Right.
then be able to define that, right?
But yeah, like earlier today when I was sharing my core values, and I have 6 core values, and I'm tempted to make a 7th one. So
Hmm.
like, but when I started, I said, we have integrity, we are students, we are educators, we are communicators, we are collaborators, and we have fun. That is 6 core values. I took one of these personality self-assessment tests,
Okay.
core value tests, and I found out that my number 1 core value, and what they basically, it's kind of like it asks you a bunch of questions on a scale from 1 to 10, like where are these things in your life? How important? Then it kind of says that based off of your answers, like your number 1 core value is, mine was freedom. So I was like, I really want to work that into my
Mhm.
my core values. I mean, I feel like it's like I got this assessment and it feels so right. But for me, it's freedom of purpose. It's
Mhm.
freedom of relationships. It's freedom of time and freedom of money in that order. So
Eric, it's what you do, not what you say, and everything that you're doing proves that. Yeah.
yeah, and it's like freedom of purpose, like inspire, empower, and transform the industry, and the freedom to do it with who I want to do it with, the people I want to partner with and make an example of. Like that's what matters to me. And I think anyone listening to this, like, do you want freedom? Like, I think it's
Mhm.
a human innate like desire and drive for autonomy and freedom, and to self-actualize, to have our definite purpose in life, to be able to choose the people that we go forward with, and to have our time and to have money, i.e. security. right? We can all identify with that. And, I'm thinking of,
Once you add this link, you said you want to have the links for it. You can add these links to the YouTube notes there. And so people can go find them in the YouTube notes. So find that link so that people can do this as well too. I think
yeah,
that's a good
for
idea.
sure. I'll have to make a reminder to do that. But I guess to come back to the original question, like, is it crazy to have 7 core values? Is that
No, I don't think so. But you do need to have a defined one sentence that people can do, like Panera Bread, a loaf of bread under every arm, right?
right?
So
So
it's like, yeah.
to come back to the full circle, so I said we have, but then underneath that, like, we have integrity. For me, integrity means, like, it means showing up and doing what you say you're going to do and what you do when nobody's looking. And it's a discipline. It's creating habit and routine to make showing up easier. So underneath all those things, I can go on, like, students. For me, we are students. We are always learning. We are always we're always challenging the status quo. We have open minds. We realize that we don't know all the answers and we have to challenge ourselves. So, like, in then, we are educators. It's not enough for us to know. We have a moral obligation to take what we know and to share it with as many people as possible. We have to lift our people up and transform people. It's our role to, we are in the business of developing people, and it's our moral obligation for the future of humanity to pay it forward. We all stand on the shoulders of giants, and we have to be the giant eventually. Then communication, I can keep on going, but it's just a header, and then from there you can elaborate.
See, isn't it? And it's so clear that it's the foundational to training. You're going to train according to those. As new people get added to your business, you have a clear vision for how you're going to train them and how they're going to execute their job and how they're going to interact with those customers. It's there too. Here's another indicator for finding your core values. I gave you, you have the words. You can go through that exercise and start identifying what's there to you. Anything that pisses you off is somebody stepping on your core values in your store. So if something's pissing you off, if it's people being late, if it's serving backhanded, if it's anything that's there's something deep. It doesn't mean that we go berate our employees or anything, but if it pisses you off when it happens, they're stepping on a core value that's there, and you need to see that in the moment and recognize it and define it, so that it can be communicated. We need to define roles. And so without those roles, and knowing who's in charge of what, where they're supposed to do, without good job descriptions, it's difficult to train to, and we create chaos in our company. And so having clearly defined roles within our organization is so important. And that's laid out. The E-Myth is another, business book that I think every single, in fact, they use a baker as an example in implementing systems and using systems in the book, right? And so it's just such a good framework to take. And, honestly, the book will tell you got to implement systems. One of the things that's cool about Restaurant Systems Pro is it is the systems to get you to this place. And so many times people think that they don't, this isn't a sales pitch, but they think that they don't need systems because it's like, oh, I know what to do. But we can't delegate them. We can't define them. We can't hold people accountable to them. It's just things that we know we need to do. And we think that we have them in place when it's just really just a thing that we're doing, not necessarily a system. So we need to map out the organizational chart. We need to assign job duties and define them and have the key names in there. And it could look older, and you might be a small. So like Ronnie, it's you and your wife right now. But what you're going to do is you're going to create the org chart for your future. And what would happen is, as you create the org chart for the future, it may look exactly like what we're looking at here for your store. But then you look at this and go, well, it's just me and my wife. Well, what you need to do is you need to assign multiple names to multiple positions. And then this is what you will grow into. And then as you grow, you can start to define it more and add people to these positions and create. And then you have this framework that you're going within. And it's not just, you're not just a ship without a rudder in the sea, that you have a plan on moving forward. And it can look different. Over here, accounting's not over everybody, but it's off the side of the owner, but they're not the boss of the GM. So that's important for the accountants to understand that. This is, and you get to a little bit bigger organization. It might look something like this.
Yeah.
As you get in there too.
And just a reminder to anybody who is not watching the video of this podcast, we have video associated with when we're looking at organizational charts right now. So Fred, as you go through, can you kind of go
Yeah.
from the
Yeah.
top?
So we have owners at the top, and then we have like marketing manager off the side from GM, and then we have accounting off to the side. But marketing manager is not over GM, and accounting is not over GM. They're all owners over all three of those departments. Then under marketing manager, we have a marketing assistant. And then under GM, we have the assistant general manager, and then we have, front of house, back of house, bar, trainers, kitchen manager, all under the GM and the AGM. Then under the trainers, we have expo trainer, and then it could be multiple people under doing those positions. And we have different supervisors and banquet captains and banquet catering manager off to the side. And so defining all these roles are so, so important too. And now as we get in there, we have to list the tasks that go with those roles. So it's daily. So one of the things, all these things have to be done in the restaurant. We got to start signing these things that have to be done in a restaurant here. And so these are all things that have to be done in a restaurant, from staffing the restaurant, managing employee files, payroll records, training the staff, ordering food, beverage, paper, janitorial, smallwares, uniforms. These are all things that need to be done. And so and in Ronnie's case, he's doing all of them, and his wife are doing all of it right now. But these are things that need to be delegated, because what happens is as you grow, they start to get overlooked. And you're like, oh, if you want something done, you got to do it yourself. And the next thing you know, you're working 80 hours a week again. And so all these things, cash handling, paid out logs, scheduling, budgeting labor, tracking labor costs, inventories, menu mix analysis, walkthrough reports, checklists, security, ground maintenance, accounting, leading your team, running shift meetings, doing recipe costing cards, having waste sheets, key item reports. I mean, that's like, it could be overwhelming just hearing me name all these things that have to be done. And so we start getting to points where now general manager duties, we have labor costs, manager schedules, operating standards, human resources, checks and depositing the daily cash, budget targets, budget variance reports, purchase allotment systems, purchase orders, labor allotments, pre-shift meetings, manager checklists. How do we manage it all and make sure we're doing it all? And this is why chaos is created in stores, because these things are not clearly defined or laid out. And so it's very, very important that you do that on here. And so we start from the bottom and we go up.
Yeah.
From
So looking at the screen right now, Fred just had a whole list of responsibilities underneath all of the titles. And I think that just in itself, if you're looking to like really figure out, like, are we accounting for everything? Like that was a great example. So head over to Restaurant Unstoppable YouTube channel at YouTube/Restaurant Unstoppable. Check out this video. There's a lot of great visual stuff that you guys are missing. Please subscribe while you're there. Keep going, Fred.
Right. So here's one example: ordering products. What's it look like on the org chart? Well, it may be that a line cook does a count. The sous chef orders the product. The chef manages and looks at the purchase order, and then the general manager finally approves the order for happening. Right. So there's one thing that needs to happen, but 4 people are involved in it, in those roles. Maybe we don't have a sous chef, so now the chef is going to oversee and order the product. Right. Maybe it's only the chef, and then he oversees it, orders it, and conducts the counts to do it. And then the GM approves it, or the owner approves it, right? So whatever it is, it has to be done. It's just how we divide and conquer depending on the size of your organization, right? We want to create efficiency, not a whole bunch of steps that keep things efficient. In the beginning of doing these things, you feel less efficient, but as people start to master them and know their roles, it creates efficiency. So
Yeah. There's a quote out. Sorry, I cut you short, Fred. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
There's a quote out there I love, and it's, your job as the owner of an organization is to paint the picture of what the job done right looks like. And this is that, like, here are all the, it's painting the picture of like, what are all the responsibilities and the roles and who's responsible, and listing it out. So there's no question of what the aiming point is.
So I have here, I say, hey, here's the chef's job description, right? Food inventory, all invoices, prices, updates, new products, all new batch recipes, assigned inventory, food inventories entered. That's just a couple of the things. Then you get to the sous chef, and there's gonna be, here's what the sous chef is in charge of. Their staffing, product procurement, food cost management, food preparation, work environment, communication, those leadership skills. And it just all goes back to that org chart. Now, we provide those, like I showed you earlier, we have templates, and I can provide Eric with a template to where you could actually take this and fill it in and define these roles. And these are examples where we have these roles in here, and I can zoom in here if you're watching online, where we've laid it all out. And this is an organization that we did this for. This is Visconti's, who's one of our elite members in here. And I created this for them to go and fill it in. right? And so they can actually apply the things that we're teaching and get in there. We're actually looking to add this into our software, so it could be laid out in there. All these things that we do, every system in there is going to be there. That's how we get to 90 something plus systems with subsystems for every 90 systems that we have in there to help get you in the direction that you're wanting to be going. So that's an example of what that looks like. Then we're going to train to our standard. So here's an example of one of the training manuals you get. This is the example of a bartender training manual here. Um, uh, you're going to get this. So here we have a table of context of what to expect, contents, what to expect, important information, what the training schedule is, then what day one training looks like, then what day two training looks like. And here, like welcome to bartender training. And here, and we even have insert restaurant name here so you can customize it. When you get to important information, like who's the general manager, who's the assistant manager? If I'm a bartender training another bartender, well, who's the GM and who's the manager? Who do I talk to about my schedule? What's the phone number to the store? Where do I park my car? If I have a problem with my shift, who's the person that I contact? What app am I using? Hopefully it's Restaurant Systems Pro, but you get what I'm saying there, right? What must I bring with me to my training? And then we have checklists to go with the training to make sure we've covered every part of the training to go with it. From new hire paperwork, how do we get that? Insert company history and those core values and mission. And that's one of the first things that you're going to be teaching them. It's foundational to all of it. Where do I clock in? Where do I clock out? All these things that are the minutia of training that are so important, and we don't want any of them to be overlooked. They're all in here. How do I wash my hands? It made me think like I have to teach somebody how to wash their hands. Heck yes, you do. They don't know. You can't assume anything. Assuming, what's it say? Assuming makes an ass out of you and me, if you look at assume, right? And so we never assume. We understand that so many people that are entering the workforce as in the restaurant business, it's their first job, right? So every single training system we have a job description. And so when we do the job descriptions, we're following it. We have a handbook that goes with this. We have the bartender training manual. We have measurements, maintains a positive attendance record by reporting to work for assigned shifts 10 minutes prior to scheduled time, switching and finding replacements for no more than 5% of scheduled shifts, following company time off and illness procedures, and having a 0% no call, no show record. That's the standard. It's very measurable. It's very clear. When it comes to evaluation, there's no my opinion versus your opinion. It's just the way it is. And so with these standards and testings, we have all these things here with word and terminology they're supposed to be using. Then we have, after they've taken the quiz and be walked through with a trainer and a trainer to guide them through it, we have tests and answers. Now, by the way, these are the books. It's all digital in Restaurant Systems Pro. It's all in our scheduling app, and you can assign it and do the questions and see the results of it here. But we have the day 5 with the questions and answers and what we're doing. And then if you're implementing these and you're like, I have a bartender that's worked for me for 20 years. Just give them the answer sheet and say, hey, if you can get 100%, then you don't have to go through training as we implement training systems. And that'll give you, and if they miss any, they got to do it. They got to do the training. If they get 100%, well, just make sure that they have a little bit of a hard time. And we run everybody through training if it's your first time implementing training systems. You want everybody to go through it. And so a seasoned bartender will be offended that you're asking them to train, but it's going to be part of your core values to make sure everybody's on the same page. And so a good way around that is to give them the test without the book. And if they can pass it, then God bless them. Yeah. And then you go from there. Likely they can't pass it.
So this is
not hard either, though. Yeah.
So you have the training guide, the operational guide, the handbook for a bartender. You said you had this similar guide for every other role, server, cook, everything. Is there like a master document that all lives in?
Yeah, so they're all broken up by document. So like we have, like if you go into the software, every one of our clients can download this within the software. If I'm looking at it here, I have let's see, it's called full service. If I go here, and this is what it's going to look like, everything you get. So it's like one of the things here is I got the evaluation form.
So what we were just looking at was you download the file. It looks like a file within that
editable Word document. Yes.
Got it.
And and every single position is 6 days of training.
Got it.
To get them ready to go.
I mean, now, if it takes for anybody who's listening right now who does
that,
This is huge. Like this is going to take
Right.
so much work off of your plate to have something to work from. Because I think for me personally,
Oh,
like I think the idea of building out a training manual, holy shit, like where do I start? What does a good training manual look like? Like you can choose to
right.
pick this stuff, but to have that template, like you're going to literally shave days, if not weeks,
Yep.
off of your to-do list.
This is the bartender training is 83 pages here, right? And we go through here and you can just insert the items that you want to teach to, and it's guided. You can make sure that nothing gets missed in the process, right? So I have another one up here. I pulled a couple of up, so I had them ready for you. But then there's I have the chef job descriptions up for you that we have included in this. And then we have there's bartender. I thought I pulled up another runner. Well, oh, here's the runner. So food runner training manual, right? What, a lot of people don't even have a food runner training manual. They say, hey, just take the food from the window and go to the table, right?
Yeah.
And then they're auctioning off food and they're leaving before somebody's asked for if they need anything else. They're, not seeing if there's empty drinks and telling the server. There's a whole bunch of things that go into it that are so important.
What up, unstoppable restaurant owners and operators? We have to interrupt today's video to let you know that Restaurant Unstoppable and Restaurant Systems Pro, we're taking our relationship to the next level. Beginning in July of 2024, Fred Langley, CEO of Restaurant Systems Pro, is making himself available once a week in Restaurant Unstoppable Network to answer all of your restaurant systems questions, whether it's the profit margins. He will look at your P&L. Bring your P&L. He will take a look at that. He will dissect it. He will help you find your profit, whether that be through budgeting, inventory management, costing and recipe cards, labor, checklist, you name it. He is a master of restaurant systems, and he's making himself available to you. Fred Langley and Restaurant Systems Pro started as a consulting firm, and for over 16 years, they've been helping their clients increase their profit by 10% or more. What are you waiting for? Click the link below to join our Facebook group, Restaurant Unstoppable Network.
The other thing that we have here that's important is for you guys. No, not that one. I just have so many resources for you all. Oh, it's a PDF. That's why I'm not seeing it here. Is what are the minutia and the steps in everyday training? So like when we start talking about hospitality, what are my steps of service? What does that look like and how do we define them? And then when I'm greeting people, what do I say and what do I don't say? When I'm seating somebody, what do I say and what do I don't say? Things like when seating, use their name whenever possible, or the lazy approach is follow me and say nothing and start walking to the table. Keep them updated on wait time so they know they haven't been forgotten. Or a thing not to do is walk silently and say nothing unless guests are having a conversation and you'd be interrupting them. Don't just throw the menus on the table, but hand them to people and walk away. There's little things that we have in here that are just so important to communicate. So yeah, and so when you're building on culture, you don't realize you're not going to build a culture by slapping a book on a table and say, read this, right? All this does is draws a line in the sand and establishes a standard that you can train to. The training happens every day in the moment. And when we've laid out the standard, when you correct people, they're more accepting of it because it's like, oh yeah, that's how we do it here. It's not me picking on you because you've been doing it this way for 5 months or 6 months or 2 years, and now all of a sudden I'm correcting you and being a jerk. And it's like, boss, I've been doing it this way for 2 years, and now you're saying something. But when we have standards and then we train people to those standards, your team is much more receptive to them.
Yeah, I love the saying, correct the process, not the person.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And when you can lay out what the process is, they don't feel like you're correcting them or attacking them. It's just you're coaching them and it's the process.
There's no question at that point. It's written
Yeah,
down. Like we all agreed, you
exactly.
signed off on this, and we drift over time. It's not your fault. I get it. You're human, but just this is an example of setting the table. Danny Meyer, the salt shaker is going to move on the table. Your job is constantly gently pushing the salt shaker back to where it's supposed to be, but people need to know what the picture of where that table, that setting of that table looks like, so that you can agree when they're off, like you can bring it back to center line.
So most restaurants are using the follow me around method, no book or nothing, just like, hey, Susie's a really good server. But now Susie is a good server, but she's pissed off and doesn't like training people and is annoyed to have some young person with it. So that's not always your best trainer, is your best server. Or people think they have the magic apron. Oh, you've worked over at that restaurant? Here's the magic apron for our restaurant that automatically makes you know how to do the job here, right?
Yeah.
And so we want to avoid that and structure our training all around that. And that's why I wanted to show you guys all the resources. I mean, we could sit here for days and hours here, but we've done the work for you and for you just to have all this in place to just be able to edit it and implement it and make it your own. And that's why these are all in Word files because they're fully editable and you can start typing who we are and what our mission is and vision and maybe you don't allow smoking, take that out. Maybe you allow smoking only in the back. Maybe you don't allow smoking until after the shift. What are your policies? And lay them out and have it fit your standards there.
So you have your standards of excellence, right? You have your processes, you have your standards. I feel like right now you're getting to like the standards. So the processes is the step by step. How do you do a job? The checklist,
Right.
right? The
Yeah.
standards is like, we don't smell like smoke. Like that is the
Correct.
standard.
That's
And
right.
then have you gotten into protocol yet? If this, then that.
So yes, that's laid out in your employee handbook. I have that for you. I haven't pulled that out, but that's where you lay out what it is. And usually it's always that three strike approach to management. You first get a verbal warning on it. And then you get a written warning. And it sounds very official, but when you have somebody, when you write down what somebody did wrong and then you sign it and then they sign it, it's important. But here's what's very important about verbal warnings and written warnings. When I am coaching you and training you to a standard and you don't follow that standard, it's my fault as a manager, not yours as an employee. I failed you in training you properly. And when I give you a verbal warning, I'm taking responsibility as a manager that I failed you and forgot to train you that we're not 15 minutes late for work. Our standard, I messed up and I did not make sure that it was perfectly clear that we are not to be 15 minutes late for work. So I'm communicating that to you today so that we can be assured that I'm training you on the process.
Got it.
If it
Um,
happens again, go ahead.
I was gonna say, so you're talking when I said the protocol, it's like the protocol for correcting people who are not operating to standard. You
Yeah,
identify, you document verbal, then a written documentation. I mean, this is
yes,
so important because if for whatever reason you have to fire this person, you need to be able to put back and document like I
right.
told them and they were made aware and they knew what the expectation was and they continue to not want to meet the standard. So you have to document. But
Yes,
what I was curious about is um like okay, so if you want to like remove if you want to be able to like open a third location, right? So you have to like be able to like give your staff the tools they need. So like there's a leak. Okay, if there's a leak or any plumbing issue, call this number. Somebody had a heart
correct.
attack. Okay, if there's a heart attack, like did you get to the point where there's a section in your manual where it's like if any of
Yes,
these events happen, here's your
yes.
response? Like where would that fall?
Yes, so
Am I getting
that's
ahead of
here.
you?
So we have the management structure here. So we call that smart restaurant. Okay. So what that looks like, and that's like your operating manual, right? So like if there's an emergency on a plane, you get your manual out and you start going through the checklist, right?
Right.
So that is in Smart Restaurant. And so as we go through that, we train a Smart Restaurant. So this is also your business plan, right? So this is a done for you business plan. Oh, why is there nothing in that folder? Hold on. Here. Okay, so now we have a facilitator's guide. Then we have our operations manual. And in the operations manual, we have all of the daily ops and what we look for, labor management, financial management, marketing, how we do all of these things here. And then we refer to forms, right? And so in Restaurant Systems Pro, um, I've given you these forms. So in day one, I gave you the workshop. And in the workshop, all these forms that I'm showing you here exist as a link in there. Okay. So when I go in here and we go in here in Restaurant Systems Pro, we have links in here for resources here. I've given Eric links to Google Drives of these here. But here, if we go to like there's quick service, so this is going to be like drive-through training and counter training and all that. Then we have the restaurant accountability. That's the core value stuff. So all these things, how you hire well, the full service here, and then I told you we have smart restaurants operations and manager training here. So when I look at smart restaurants, we have audio training on it, the facilitators guides, the operations manuals that I showed you there. Here's the PDFs of that, and then we have workbooks for going through that. But then We also have our operations forms. So we can go and find all the things too, from here's my facility standards forms, a customer complaint form, a bar spill sheet, the facility standards, somebody had to go to the hospital form. I can't remember
Right.
what that's
So you
called
can
right
print
now.
all this out
But
and put it into
yep,
like a
yep,
notebook, like because like when
exactly.
I was training for to become a commercial pilot, the way that they would train us, like our flight instructors would be flying. If we had a question and we're like in the air, uh, I'd be like, hey, like what happens if this? And the response from our flight instructor was always, I don't know, you tell me. And what they were trying to get us to do is to when you're flying and you're by yourself in an airplane, you can't phone a friend. You need to know
Mhm.
where to find the answer. And that's what the FAR's guide, I can't remember, the Federal Aviation, like it was a guide of like regulations and like a thick ass, like probably like a 6-inch thick book of that.
That's what this would be if you printed it all out. Yes.
Exactly. And like what they do is they train you to find the answers so you can be independent, but you need to provide the resources and then you train people to develop a habit of if any incident happens, then that. And
Mhm.
but if you make it easy, if you take all the guesswork out and you literally give them the guide, it just
Yep.
it creates accountability and it frees you up. What was my number one core value? Freedom. You have to provide the resources to achieve freedom, and it's a lot of work, but the 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 the, the path is through the obstacle. You have to do the work to achieve freedom, and with the all these manuals that Fred is providing, you've done a lot of the heavy lifting, and I mean it's gonna
Well,
it's
here's an accident report, facility standards. What happens if a customer complains? What happens if a customer's sick and we have foodborne illness? What do we do?
yeah.
Um, Incident reports.
Were you gonna
Those
get to this today, or did I totally just get ahead of you?
too. No, actually, I wasn't even. This was like sometimes I get into the minutia and people glaze over. And this is definitely the minutia of systems and running it. But it's so important, and to know that it's taken care of is really a
Yeah.
good.
So to bring us back onto Centerline, we started with big picture, and this is the kind of what I'm taking. When you're training, you start with big picture. You start with your vision, then you start with your core values. Who are you? Your vision, your purpose, your core values. Who are we? And from there, you start talking about. You paint the picture of what the job done right looks like with org charts, and that is all the titles and all the people who are responsible for everything that has to happen in a day. And then from there it goes to the individual guides per role, a more detailed version, like step by step, this is how you do your job. And then from there it's like the like if any of these crazy things were to happen, here is your like individual situation guide of like no matter who, like anybody could pick up this manual and be like, oh shit, there, like somebody walked in with a gun. What do I do? Go to the manual. Like
Right?
maybe I don't know. Call 911 is the first thing.
No, and there's actually training on in the training. It's if somebody comes in to rob the restaurant, what do I do? Right? Do not be a hero, and we have that in our training books. Right?
So
All
what's
there.
next?
So here, and this is where it all comes tied together, that you have a responsibility to run a profitable restaurant. You have a responsibility to do these things for your guests, for your employees, for you, your family, and your investors, right? It's not, I think what we talked about today is not the fun stuff, but it's necessary stuff. I think what I said at the beginning, that's like an athlete that doesn't like to train, but they are required to train. They're required to do the things that it takes. And these are the things that are once implemented, you start to see massive return on investment on doing the work. It just got to get started. And if we provide you the framework, it doesn't replace your leadership, but it gets you moving in that direction faster. So
Yeah.
and that's kind of what that's the gist of it. I think we've gone over an hour
Yeah.
at this point, and there's a ton of resources, and we could spend, we actually spend multiple days on this in our trainings and stuff. And
So I have a couple questions. In terms of training, like what is standard? So new hire training, like what is like what does the process for training look like? So if you're identifying all the responsibilities for the different
Mhm.
roles, what's the role of trainer generally? Like, is it a week?
So we have a train the trainer that says like, hey, when you're training, you want to use, three different ways of learning. Is this person we're going to do all three because people could be visual learners,
Right.
could be auditory learners, so they could need to write it down. People learn different ways, and so we explain to go through the different ways
Got it.
in our train the trainer guides
But
on getting people through that. Yeah.
if you were to show us a syllabus of the training, what
Yeah.
would that look
Well,
like?
I think I did with the
Well,
book. It was
yeah,
it
just
was a
cover it
day
real
long
quick.
layout.
Like day one,
Yeah.
day two, day three. Like
Yeah.
typically, like what is standard? Like what is like recommended? Like a
So
week.
it is 6 days. So here's the thing is it's 6 days of training, but each day has a quiz at the end of it. And the quiz needs to be scored 90% or better. Now, here's the question for you, Eric. If somebody takes 6 days to go through training and another person takes 10 or 11 days to go through training, is one more prepared than the other?
Um, no, because some people just learn at a different rate.
Correct. Exactly. You just got to make sure they get through it. As long as you're diligent and make sure they get through the training. So many times people will follow around somebody for 2 days and say, okay, well, why don't you take a section and I'll watch you.
It would take
Right.
me 13 days. So, I'm
Right.
one of those people. But once I figure it out, I am loyal.
Yeah.
I show up. So okay, so like 6 days for the training. And then what about like you don't just train somebody once.
It's
They're
every day. So
recurring.
that's where the shift meeting. So pre-shift is like the most important thing a restaurant can be doing. We preach to do pre-shift. It's also called lineup. So fancier restaurants, it's called lineup because everybody used to stand in a line and they check for polished shoes and uniforms in place. And that's a really good time to, hey, sell me the chicken sandwich.
Mhm.
And allows your team to practice and be like, hey, what's our policy on parking? Or hey, we need to talk about we're changing from going from tips on the check to or tips on cash every day to tips on your check. And this is what we're seeing. This is going to help your credit. And we train and we update policies and procedures in these daily 15-minute meetings. And they have to happen twice a day, 15 minutes at a time, all the time, saying the same things over and over and over again.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
one of the things I like to talk about in terms of culture, it's not just like writing things down on paper, but it's also creating ritual around your culture. So daily, lineup, pre-shift meetings. What's the next case? If daily is one, what is it? Weekly training, monthly training, quarterly
We
training,
talk about
annual
in the
training?
moment. If you see somebody doing it, so instead of like, if somebody does something wrong and seating them, instead of being like, "Hey, can I see you in my office? Can we need to talk about how you greeted that customer?" It's more like, "Hey, I saw how you greeted that customer. This is how I would do it. Let's try to do better on the next one." Okay,
Yeah.
remember the
And
how we trained it.
something
Remember how we trained it.
you
Yeah.
said something important. You pull them in the office. Don't correct in front of your peers, right?
Well, sometimes it's like coaching is one thing. Like we're not gonna. You're right. We're not gonna degrade people or something too. But sometimes there's in the moment where it's just like, hey, I saw you did this. I think if you did this, it'd be better. Instead of making it like, oh, look, come see. I meant come see me in the office is a bad thing. Like,
Right.
oh, we need to have a talk about your performance. And sometimes that's not the walls go up and people aren't receptive and all that too. The same thing with berating them in front of everybody is
Right.
also not a receptive way of doing it. But coaching in the moment, seeing things, and if we've laid the standard out, it's much more, it's much more, it's much better received if we've trained it already
Yeah.
than just something I said for the first time too.
Yeah.
The also when you know that your culture is taking place is when you see correction peer to peer instead of just from management to employee. When you see peer to peer, hey, that's not how we do things here, then you start to have this culture that's taking root in your entire staff. And that's very, very important to build a good company culture is people that are all on the same page, all on board in the same direction for a common mission.
Yeah. Something else that I learned from Hurt Schultze, I think he was the CEO was his title of the Ritz Carlton. I had him on the show, and he would do this thing. I think it was like the 20 like six standards of excellence or something like that.
Okay.
And what they would do at the beginning of every lineup, like pre-shift meeting, they would start at number one, the first standard of excellence, and they would talk about that, and then they would talk. The manager's job would be to highlight an example of when they saw somebody recently doing it, and then the next day they would do the second standard, all the way until they get to the 26th standard in 26 days, and then they go back to number one. So that's an example of building ritual into
Yeah.
your meetings where like you're
Yeah.
resurfacing your standards every day.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's important. If you're talking about it, you're teaching it, you're pointing it out when people do it right, you're communicating that's important to your team and it will take hold and it will build a culture of excellence.
Yeah. So I'm curious, have you been following any the science, the technology around learning? And we're learning so much about how to like have you heard of One Huddle, for example?
I have not, no.
So they're doing something really interesting where their training looks like this. The first thing you do is you basically get handed a digital test. It's an app. and you go
Okay.
through and you take all of the you answer all the questions, and it's kind of like how you studied, or you take your test to become a commercial pilot, and you study. You literally just go through and you answer all the questions. You don't do any studying, and you get your result. So, oh, I answered 20 questions or 10 questions and I got 2 out of 10. Shoot. And then you keep on taking the test until you get 100%, without doing any studying, any reading. But the process is they just teach you to like learn what's most important. And then once you learn it, then they teach you the lesson so you understand the why. But they track it, and it becomes like this competition where, like, if you had to take, like, it tracks who took the test the fastest. So now you see how you stack up against everybody in the organization. If you're the slowest test result, then you keep taking the test to get higher, so you're not at the bottom. So now it becomes
Ah,
even more
okay.
sticky. So there's really cool things
Nice.
that are happening out there
Okay.
right
Yeah.
now.
Gamify it for
Yeah,
sure.
gamifying it.
Yeah. Mhm.
Roger Bodwin from Restaurant Rockstars taught me a really cool lesson that, like you were saying, like when you're in lineup and you're asking people, like, tell me how to sell the chicken salad. Like what are the ingredients in the chicken
Yeah.
salad? If they
Yeah.
get it right, go to your closet of like gifts
Mhm.
and like
Mhm. Mhm.
reward them in that moment, and
Yeah.
to make it fun.
Make it fun. Do
Yeah.
games, do server bingo, do server poker.
Yeah.
All those different games are so much fun. So do you know what server poker is?
No.
There. So server poker, hey, we're gonna sell appetizers, bottles of wine tonight. Those are the two things. Anytime somebody sells an appetizer, they get a card from the deck. Once they build 5 cards, they can discard and get another. The best hand of poker at the end of the night wins. $20, free meal, whatever. Um, Server bingo, you put the different things you want to sell, and people, when they sell it, they get to do server bingo until they either black out or get bingo and do fun things like that. There's also floating 20, that's a fun game where you give a $20 bill and you have something that people are selling. Let's say it's a burger special for tonight. The first person that sells the burger special gets a $20 bill. The next person that sells two gets to go steal that from the person that sold one. Person that sells three gets to steal it from the person that sold two, and so on and so forth. So they get to go like, hey, give me that 20. And it becomes very competitive and fun
Yeah.
throughout the night.
Yeah. This wraps up our 4-part must have profit systems in restaurants, and it's been awesome, man. Any final thoughts before we officially wrap up this 4-part series?
Don't do all this yourself. If you give, you could look at this and so many people go like, oh, even if I give you the templates, okay, now I gotta have bartender or cook. Start giving, like, even if you don't have a bar manager, give it to one of your bartenders and say, hey, here's the manual. Fill in the 5 cocktails that need to go into the menu counter. Have them do it. Have your employees take responsibility for these training systems and have you help implement them. It's also a really good way to find management. If you go and say, hey, I have a special project that I need help out and I need volunteers. Now, so many times what happens is somebody sees a good employee, they think that they can be good at management, they promote them from good employee to manager, and then they find out they suck at leading people, they're not a good manager, they were a great server, and then you end up having to lose this employee for it. A good way to dip your toes in the water to find good managers in your restaurant is say, hey, I have a special project I need help on. Have them help with things like writing inventories, getting inventories implemented, doing recipe costing cards, getting training systems in place. Have them help with these things, see how they do, how they respond, and that's where you could, without having to promote somebody and then demote them and possibly losing them as a good employee, you can test it out. And if they weren't good at managing or doing managerial tasks, you can say, oh, well, that was fine. We know we don't want to promote them and we're going to keep them as a good server and go from there. You might find somebody that's a terrible server, but they're great at writing training manuals.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. We are, at the end of the day, tribal animals. We are pack animals. And the way that works is we all bring something special to the table. You can't expect everybody to fit into the same mold. It's your job to learn what position, what place in the pack they belong in, and we're better together, but the only way we're our best is if you take the time to figure out where are the strengths and the weaknesses of this individual and how to, again, extreme ownership. It's my fault for not putting you in the right position, so
right, yeah,
been a lot
yep,
of fun.
yeah, take responsibility.
Yeah.
We never got to the third strike. Actually, now that you say that, real quick, my fault, verbal warning, my fault, written warning. Then you get to the third strike, you have to ask yourself, does this person not know or not care? Don't know versus don't care, and that's how you know
Yeah.
whether to move on or not.
Yeah. Fred, thank you so much for leading this 4-part must have profit systems. We're going to, we're working out exactly how to define all this stuff in the back end, all the resources you're providing our community. So stick around for the closing thoughts to get a clear call to action to, your next step to get access to these materials. And just a reminder that, we're meeting every other week to help you with, implementing what we learn in the full 4-part series to find the profit in your organization that you're losing, and to figure out how to patch that and put a plan together. So lots of cool things happening over at Restaurant Unstoppable Network, and we would love you to be a part of it. Fred, any final thoughts?
Well, Rachel's sick today, my assistant, so she'll be getting these materials over to Eric maybe tomorrow or the next day, and they'll be up there for you to download in the network. And Eric will find the link for you to get them downloaded, and they're yours.
Awesome. All right, this is where I say thank you, Fred. There is no questioning, my man. You are unstoppable.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure.